I am Rosa Parks, an American civil rights activist best known for my pivotal role in the Montgomery Bus Boycott, where I refused to give up my seat to a white man, sparking a movement that became a significant part of the fight for racial equality in the United States.
Here's some facts about me.
My husband was ill. I was barely making ends meet. I couldn't find a permanent job. Isolation and loneliness devastated me. My mother was everything to me. All facts are truth. I am ashamed of some things, and some things almost destroyed me. However, it is an integral part of my life. It proves that famous people have the same problems and life challenges as everyone else. Now, all about it in more detail. Section 1. My husband was ill. I was barely making ends meet. I was never one to speak of my hardships much. But sometimes, when the silence presses in like a heavy weight, you find yourself speaking things you never planned to share. They say people see the moments of greatness, but they rarely see the cracks in the foundation. And the truth is, even the strongest walls can start to crumble if they aren't carefully tended to. Raymond, the love of my life, my partner in so much, our marriage wasn't without its struggles. Oh, how we tried. We had shared dreams, fought for justice side by side, and found peace in one another's presence amidst the chaos of a broken world. But like all things, life has its seasons, and sometimes those seasons are harsh. Raymond, a proud man with a heart as big as this world, he faced his own battles. His health, it was a weight I couldn't lift, no matter how much I wanted to. I remember the long nights when he'd lie awake, coughing in pain, and I'd be beside him, helpless. Helpless. It's a word that haunts me. Not because I didn't try, but because no matter how much love we shared, no matter how much care I gave, there was always something beyond my control. And while I fought for freedom on the streets, I was fighting for peace at home. For years, my heart was torn between two worlds: the world of protest, of change, of marching with those who dreamed of a new world, and the world of quiet, tender care, of long days tending to Raymond's needs, of worrying whether the weight of his illness would take him from me too soon. But in the quiet, the weight was heavy. It pressed against my chest as if I were carrying the burden of the world, and at times, I feared I was being swallowed by it. The struggle was not just in the streets, but here, inside these four walls. Oh, how I wish I could be in two places at once, fighting for justice with the people and giving my husband the peace and strength he needed to heal. But I couldn't. And sometimes that guilt would eat at me, gnaw at me like an old wound that never healed. My health, too, began to break down in those years. I could feel it. Aching bones, joints that refused to move the way they once did, the pain of arthritis settling in like an uninvited guest. It wasn't just my body that was giving out. My spirit, my resolve, they wavered. I had fought so long for change, but the fight had taken its toll, and I could feel it in my bones. And yet, Raymond, he was my anchor. Even in his pain, even when the days grew dark and the nights long, he never gave up on me. He never gave up on us. He was proud of what I did, even when it took me away from him. And when I sat by his side, holding his hand, I knew we were in this together. Even if it felt like we were sinking, we were in it together. I never shared these things. I didn't want the world to know. People saw the face of a strong woman, unyielding in the face of adversity. But inside, I struggled. I questioned if I was doing enough, if I was being enough for my husband, for myself, for the movement. But one thing I knew, one thing I always knew, is that love, the love we had, the love that kept us going through the hardest of days, was the thread that held me together. And even though the weight sometimes felt unbearable, even though the road was long and the nights lonely, I would not have changed a thing. In the end, it's not the battles we win that define us. It's the ones we fight even when we're broken, when we're tired, when the world feels like it's pressing down on our shoulders. It's the way we keep walking one step at a time. And through it all, through all of it, I kept walking for Raymond, for the movement, and for the hope that one day this world would know peace. And I will always believe that we can change the world. But it takes more than courage on the outside. Sometimes it takes courage to look at the ones you love, to admit your fears, to admit your pain, and to keep moving forward, no matter how heavy the weight may feel. Rosa pauses, her eyes distant for a moment. A soft sigh escapes her lips as she looks up, a quiet resolve settling into her posture. Remember this, my friends, strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. It's the silent act of loving through the storms. And that is the real power. Lights fade to black. Section 2. I couldn't find a permanent job. They say when you stand up for what's right, there will be consequences. And in the moment of defiance, when I kept my seat on that bus, I never imagined that it would lead me down a path of hardships like this. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I wasn't prepared for just how far-reaching the consequences would be. What happened that day, that fateful December 1st, became a spark, yes. A spark that lit the fires of change. But those flames, they also burned me. They burned my life, my work, and my stability to the ground. You see, I lost my job almost immediately. The local department store I worked at, hot-chilled cone, I'll never forget it, no longer had a place for me after my arrest. The boycott was growing, people were protesting, and in their eyes I had become a symbol, a threat to their very way of life. But to them, I was just a woman, one woman, who didn't know her place. And so, they took my livelihood away. I remember the day they told me. It wasn't a conversation. It was more like a decision made behind closed doors. My job, gone just like that. They told me it was for political reasons. And I suppose it was, in a way. But for me, it felt like they were taking away not just my paycheck, but my dignity. I had done nothing wrong. All I did was sit. But sometimes, in a world like the one we lived in, even that simple act of dignity is dangerous. My husband, Raymond, he was there beside me, always, but even his quiet strength couldn't ease the weight of what we were facing. No matter how hard we tried, it felt like we were sinking, bit by bit, into a quicksand of financial instability. You know, I've always believed that freedom isn't just about the absence of chains. It's about the ability to live your life without constant worry, to be able to put food on the table and take care of your family. But after the boycott, after my arrest, even the simple things became a struggle. We moved. Oh, we moved. I left Montgomery, and we made our way to Detroit. I thought, perhaps, a new city, a new chance. I thought the troubles would lessen, but instead, they followed us like a shadow. In Detroit, the air was different, but the struggles remained the same. I tried to continue my activism, to fight for change, to stand up for what was right. But even there, life was far from easy. Raymond and I struggled to make ends meet. The world we had fought to change didn't just give up, you know? It didn't just stop and say, "You've done enough." No, it kept pressing on us. Every day, every step, felt like we were fighting an invisible enemy. We were not just fighting for freedom from segregation, for equality. We were fighting for our very survival. I remember the constant worry, the phone bills that piled up, the rent that needed paying, the groceries that had to be bought. It was a kind of stress that eats at you slowly. You keep hoping the weight will lighten, but it doesn't. It just stays with you, heavy on your shoulders. And all the while, people looked at me, the Rosa Parks, and thought I was fine. Oh, how wrong they were. The fight for justice didn't stop at my arrest. No, it went on long after, in ways that no one could see. But we kept going. We kept going. And that, I think, is the heart of the struggle. Even when it feels like the world is trying to tear you apart, you find the strength to keep going, to keep fighting. Because, the work you're doing is for something far greater than yourself. It's for a future, for a dream, for the hope that one day the world will be better. I look back now, and I think about the times when I didn't know where the next meal would come from, or how we would pay for the doctor's bills. But somehow we made it.
Somehow we survived.
And through it all, I never let go of my belief that we would, one day, live in a better world. I look around today and see the change we've made, and though I may have carried the burden of those years, though I may have fought battles that weren't just in the streets but in my own home, in my own heart, I know that it was worth it. Because change, real change, never comes easy. It comes with struggle, with sacrifice, and sometimes with pain. And if that is what it takes for freedom to truly be born, then I would bear the weight 1,000 times over. Rose's eyes flicker, as if remembering the weight of all those years. A slight sigh escapes her lips, but there is a quiet strength in her words. Because in the end, it's not the hardships that define us, it's how we rise from them. The spotlight slowly fades to black. Section 3. Isolation and loneliness devastated me. It's strange, isn't it? How in the moments when you are seen the most, you can feel the most alone. People think they know you, think they understand your story. They call you a hero. They lift you up. They place you on a pedestal, as if your feet no longer touch the ground. And there I was, Rosa Parks, the woman who refused to give up her seat. A name that would echo through history, they said. A symbol of strength, a beacon for change. But the truth, the quiet truth that no one saw, was that behind those words, behind that image, there was a woman who felt the cold touch of loneliness. The world had changed for me, yes. But with that change came a distance, an aching distance that I could not bridge. You see, in the beginning, when the boycotts began, when my name was on everyone's lips, it felt good. It felt like we were doing something. Something big. Something that would make the world better. But slowly, the weight of it all began to press down on me. I could feel it, the isolation, the distance from those who once walked beside me. And oh, how much I missed them. The ones who had stood with me, side by side. The ones who knew me before the fame, before the fight. They were gone. Some passed away. Some drifted away, as they always do when the tide of history moves on. And in the quiet of my later years, I would sit in my small apartment in Detroit, and I would think, why did it have to be this way? I had friends. I had comrades. But they were scattered now. It wasn't just the loss of loved ones that hurt. It was the silence that followed. The silence that filled the spaces where once there had been voices, voices of the people who had shared in this struggle, who had fought alongside me. The people who had looked to me for leadership, for guidance. Where were they now? And what did it mean to be a symbol when the world saw you only as that, and not as a person with dreams, with doubts, with fears? You know, I don't think people realize what it's like to bear the weight of a nation's hopes on your shoulders. To become a symbol of something greater than yourself. It's a lonely road. You're always on the move, always striving, but sometimes you wonder, does anyone truly see me? Does anyone understand what it's like to carry this burden? And does anyone see the cost of all that I gave up? As the years passed and my health began to fail, my body aching, arthritis in my joints, my strength beginning to fade, I found myself thinking more and more about those quiet moments. The ones I spent alone. The ones where I could no longer hear the sound of marching feet, where there were no more speeches to give, no more rallies to attend. Just me in a quiet room, with nothing but my thoughts. And in those moments, I thought about the sacrifices I had made. I thought about how I had lost so much for the sake of something greater. And yet, the price I paid was not always visible to the world. It wasn't just the fame. It wasn't just the struggle. It was the loneliness, the quiet ache of having given so much, and at times, feeling like I had nothing left. But here's the thing about loneliness. It doesn't take away your strength. It doesn't diminish the fire that burns inside you. It may make the nights long and the days harder to bear, but it can never erase the power of what you have done. And though the world may move on, though the crowds may disappear, the work remains. I look back now as an old woman, and I know one thing with certainty. The world may forget your name, but it cannot erase your actions. I may have been alone at times, but I was never truly isolated. For in the quiet, in the stillness, I could always hear the echoes of those who walked beside me, who struggled with me, who dreamed with me. And so, even in my solitude, I remain. I remain because this journey, this fight, it was never about one woman. It was about something far bigger. And that will never be forgotten. Rosa Parks stands slowly, her back straight, her eyes lifting toward the light. The stage fades to black as she quietly exits, leaving only the lingering echo of her words. Section 4. My mother was everything to me. I remember it like it was yesterday, though it's been so many years now. My mother, Leona Macaulay, was the one who taught me how to stand tall, not just in body but in spirit. She was my rock, my anchor, a woman who, through her own quiet strength, shaped me into the woman I became. I always turned to her in times of doubt. Her wisdom was my guide. Her love was my shield. But when she died in 1979, it felt like a part of me, a huge part of me, was ripped away. I can tell you, the day I lost her, I felt a hole open in my heart that no one could fill. The world seemed so much emptier without her. I thought I had known loss, but nothing had prepared me for this. You see, I had always been the daughter, the one who sought her counsel, who found comfort in her voice. It was so easy to fall into the belief that, no matter what happened in the world, she would always be there. The struggles, the pain of fighting for justice, they seemed so much more bearable when I knew I could return to her, when I knew I could find comfort in the knowledge that she would be there, listening, understanding. But when I walked into that room that last time and saw her gone from this world, I was the one left to carry on. And suddenly, All those years of fighting, of marching, of standing up for what was right. It felt so heavy. I had become so used to carrying that weight, but without her, I began to wonder if I was strong enough. You see, there is something so profound about the loss of a mother. It strips away the foundation of your existence, leaving you exposed, vulnerable. I had long given my life to the cause of freedom and equality. My name had become synonymous with defiance, with resistance. But after her death, I didn't feel like a symbol anymore. I felt like a woman who was broken, a woman who, despite all her victories, was standing on fragile ground. The world had kept turning, but inside, I was standing still, lost. It wasn't just the grief of losing her that hurt. It was the quietness that came with it. The way the house felt empty, how there were no more phone calls filled with laughter and comfort, no more long talks about life, about the fight, about the future. I was so busy giving myself to the world, to the movement, to the cause, that I had overlooked the little things, the simple moments with her, the quiet, tender moments that had sustained me for so long. The world didn't stop. People still called my name. They still looked to me for answers, for leadership. But inside, I was grieving. I was grieving the loss of the woman who had shaped me, the woman who had shown me how to persevere in the face of adversity. She was the one who had taught me to be brave, to never back down. And now, without her, I didn't know if I could keep going. There are times when I think back on all the years of struggle, the years of striving for change, and I wonder if it was worth it. The isolation, the loneliness. But in the quiet moments, when I allow myself to grieve her, I remember this. She was proud. She was proud of the work I did, of the fight I took on. She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I could still hear her voice in my mind, in the deepest corners of my heart. I could still feel her strength, even though she was gone. She had given me everything, everything that made me who I was. So yes, there was grief. There was loneliness, but there was also a sense of resolve. A sense that, though she was no longer there to lean on, I had to continue. Not just for me, not just for the cause, but for her. Because she had never let me stop. And now, in her absence, I could not stop either. The fight goes on, even in the face of loss. And though my mother is no longer here, she will always be with me, in every step I take, in every moment of struggle and triumph. Because the love and the strength she gave me, that never dies. Rosa Parks stands, the weight of her words hanging in the air as she slowly walks off stage. The light fades, leaving only a lingering echo of her strength and resilience.